Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today. What a great crowd, great enthusiasm. And I am so humbled and honored, as my wife is as well, to be introduced by one of the great Republican leaders of the United States of America, the first Republican governor of Georgia, Governor Sonny Perdue, and his wonderful wife, Mary. Thank you. We're so honored. So honored that you're here. And to Vivian Scott, to all of you who have made time. My wife Karen and I are here with our two daughters. And I was humbled and honored just a few short weeks ago, it seems, to accept my party's nomination to run and serve as the next Vice President of the United States of America. I appreciated that introduction from Governor Perdue. I truly did. I've admired him for a long time, and it's wonderful to be with him today. But he knows me well enough already to know that the introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. And I want to tell you here in Georgia that I joined this campaign in a heartbeat, because you have nominated a man for president who never quits, who never backs down. He is a fighter. He is a winner. And until very recently, it seemed like he was out there fighting all on his own, but now this movement is coming together. Georgia is coming together. We're going to elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America. You know, I love to tell people, they say, what is it about Donald Trump? And I tell people, you know, we're pretty plain spoken where I grew up in southern Indiana. Little house with a cornfield in the backyard. You know, I said Donald Trump just gets it, right? Anybody know what I mean by that? I mean, he just gets it. He's a genuine article. He's as genuine as a Georgia peach. He's a real thing. The real thing. He's a doer in a game usually reserved for talkers. And when Donald Trump does his talking, he says it like it is. He doesn't go tiptoeing around all those rules of political correctness that the media lays in the way of men and women that want to make a difference. He says an agenda that will make America great again, and the American people hear him loud and clear. I got to tell you, it's kind of fun to watch, though. Kind of fun to watch how he, you know, he drives the opposition party just a little bit crazy. And the media, too. I mean, seriously, you know, they all think the usual methods are going to work against him, right? They think, now we got him now. That's the tweet we were waiting for, right? There's another word we can, you know, grab and take out of context. So they go after him and they think they finally got him. And then they wake up the next morning, turn on the TV, and Donald Trump is still standing stronger than ever before and fighting for the American people. And he's going to do that all the way to the White House on November the 8th. You know, Donald Trump, I've gotten to know over the last couple months. Somebody walked up to me the other day and they said, you know, I've known Donald Trump for a long time and I really like him. And I said, you know, I haven't known him very long at all. And I really like him too. I mean, he's someone, you get around him, he's a builder. He spent a lifetime growing up in a family of people that built things and made things. And you can tell when you're around him for a short period of time, he's more comfortable with the people that are laying the bricks, you know, that are pouring the concrete, that are framing up the buildings than he is with some of the people wearing suits and ties in the top offices. I mean, he's never forgotten the men and women of this country who work with their hands, who grow the food, who build our roads and bridges, who tend to our sick, who teach our kids. And I want to promise you, because I see him do it all the time, we end up being late to stuff because if there's someone wearing a uniform anywhere that he walks, Donald Trump stops, and he will always honor the men and women who have worn the uniform of this country at home and abroad. I know this is a great community, great part of Georgia. A lot of men and women who have worn the uniform. Would those who are able to stand and those who could raise their hand who've worn the uniform of the United States of America, please rise or raise your hand and allow us to say one more time, thank you for your service. You know, as Commander-in-Chief of this country and as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of this country, I promise you, because I've seen it in his eyes, Donald Trump will stand with those who wear the uniform to defend our freedom and defend our families every day that he's President of the United States of America. You know, it is something being involved in this campaign. I want to get to some of your questions in a few minutes, but a few things I want to get off my chest. Because it's just amazing to wake up in this campaign. Every day I turn the TV on, it's like 2 on 1 in this campaign, with the media doing half of Hillary Clinton's work for her every day. Look that way to you? I mean, the media is so busy. The media is so busy. The media is so busy parsing whatever Donald Trump said or tweeted in the last 30 minutes that I guess they don't have time to talk about what the Clintons have been up to for the last 30 years. So let me see if I can help them out a bit. See if I can catch you up. I mean, it's really kind of hard to keep up. The cascade of controversies coming out of the Clinton campaign are just exhausting some days, right? A couple weeks ago, we learned about an avalanche of emails that made the first direct connection between access granted to the State Department and to major foreign donors of the Clinton Foundation. We learned that this last week that 85 of 154 meetings that the Secretary of State granted when she was Secretary of State were to major contributors to the Clinton Foundation. And the Clintons answered all of this avalanche of controversies and conflict of interest is just saying that if she's elected President of the United States, they will stop fundraising from foreign donors and corporations to the Clinton Foundation because it would be a conflict of interest. But I got to tell you, I'm from south of Highway 40, but I'm just trying to keep current here. So if it'd be a conflict of interest if she was President of the United States to take money from foreign donors, how was it not a conflict of interest when she was Secretary of State of the United States of America? Am I right? I mean, the American people are tired of pay-to-play politics in Washington, D.C., and it's exactly the kind of politics that Donald Trump is going to bring to a crashing halt the day that he becomes President of the United States. So let me say, for the sake of preserving the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land, let's decide here and now in Georgia that Hillary Clinton will never be elected President of the United States of America. When Donald Trump becomes President of the United States, the days of a rigged system that benefits the favored few are over. Donald Trump's only special interest as President will be you, the American people, and he'll fight for you every single day. Now, despite the avalanche of controversies coming out of this administration, it's not even the worst of it. I mean, the truth is 7.5 years of leadership by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton has weakened America's place in the world and stifled our nation's economy. And you look at the result of the foreign policy of this administration, and it's truly extraordinary. If you took a picture of a map of the wider Middle East in 2009 and you looked at it again today, you almost couldn't recognize it. Literally, it appears that parts of the world are spinning apart. Terrorist attacks at home and abroad, grim and heartbreaking scenes among our allies, and inspired attacks here at home. History teaches us that weakness arouses evil. And I would submit to you that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's foreign policy of leading from behind moving red lines, feigning resets with Russia, and paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states has emboldened our enemies and endangered America and our allies. You know, let me make a promise to you. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we won't be paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states or terrorist organizations. They'll be paying a price if they threaten the American people or detain or harm the people of this nation. You know, Hillary Clinton's record on foreign affairs is extraordinary. It was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama who precipitously withdrew American forces from Iraq after stability had been achieved by 2009. The rapid and reckless withdrawal of our troops without renegotiating a status of forces agreement resulted in a vacuum in which ISIS was able to literally be conjured up out of the sand to compromise vast areas hard won by the American soldier. It was Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State that actually initiated that disastrous agreement with the radical mullahs in Iran. And perhaps most notably at all, it was Hillary Clinton and her State Department, who left Americans in harm's way in Benghazi, and then after 4 Americans fell, said before the Senate, "What difference at this point does it make?" Well, let me tell you, as the proud father of a United States Marine, I say this: anyone who said that, anyone who did that, should be disqualified from ever serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. But the record abroad is only half the story. The record here at home of this last administration and the policies of this administration that Hillary Clinton's committed to continuing is just as bad. We find ourselves in this country today in the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression. It was just last week we learned that the paltry numbers of growth in the last quarter were actually rounded down by officials in Washington, D.C. to, I think, 1.1%. We have the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s, and most heartbreaking of all, nearly 7 million more Americans find themselves living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama became president of the United States. Hillary Clinton's plan is more of the same. More taxes, more regulation, more Obamacare, and more of the same policies on energy that have stifled American growth. It truly is extraordinary. When asked how she was going to pay for more than $1 trillion in spending beyond the $1 trillion in tax increases she's advocated, Hillary Clinton said, "I'm going to tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to go where the money is. We're going to go after the super wealthy. We're going to go after corporations. We're going to go after Wall Street," close quote. Well, you know, the only problem with that is, as Margaret Thatcher said years ago, the only problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. You know, they tell us this economy is the best that we can do. They paint a rosy picture about how things in America are really as good as they're going to get. But you and I know better. It's not the best that we can do. It's just the best they can do. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to cut taxes, reduce regulation, repeal Obamacare, and end the war on coal and get this economy moving for every American in every city, large and small, across this country. Donald Trump has a plan. It's a plan to reignite the American economy based on time-honored solutions and principles of less taxes, less government intrusion, more American energy, and smarter and tougher trade deals. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to work with members of Congress, like your great senators, Senator Perdue and Senator Isaacson, and we're going to cut taxes across the board for every American. We're going to end death taxes once and for all, and we're going to lower the corporate tax in this country so businesses in Georgia can compete with businesses around the world to keep jobs here in the great state of Georgia. We're going to roll our sleeves up, and on day one, Donald Trump will sign an executive order, not creating new regulations, but establishing a moratorium on any new federal red tape, and he's going to repeal every executive order of the Obama administration that's stifling growth and jobs. Donald Trump's going to roll his sleeves up. He's going to roll his sleeves up and bring that great negotiating ability, that broad-shouldered business mind to bear on making sure that trade agreements work for the American worker. We're going to renegotiate NAFTA, and we're going to hold all of our trading partners accountable so that the American worker is the real winner when it comes to international trade. And lastly, we're going to end the war on coal once and for all, and we're going to unleash the power of the American economy in the resources of our land. Now, there's a lot of economists that look at this strategy of less taxes, less regulation, more American energy, smarter and tougher trade deals, and they're talking about some real growth. Donald Trump speaks with that boundless optimism about how quickly the American economy will spring back. Now, Hillary Clinton is a little skeptical. She said that the predictions about an economic recovery under a Trump administration were, quote, wildly unrealistic. That's what she said. Well, Donald Trump and I know the only thing that's wildly unrealistic is electing the same people with the same bad ideas and expecting a different result. The last thing I want to mention to you before I get to your questions is very simply one other thing I want to remind you of. And while this is an issue about standards in the highest office in the land, this election's about that. This election's about America's place in the world and the strength of our economy. Remember this as you talk to your neighbors and friends here in Georgia. We're going to be electing a president for the next 4 years, but that president is likely going to set the course of the Supreme Court of the United States for the next 40 years. And we better think about that. We better think about that real hard. Those of us who cherish the Constitution of the United States, those of us who cherish the God-given liberties that are enshrined there ought to think hard about it. I mean, elect Hillary Clinton, and you better get used to more unelected judges using unaccountable power to make unconstitutional actions. I want to promise you, Donald Trump is committed to appointing men and women to the Supreme Court of the United States who will strictly interpret and construe the Constitution of the United States of America in the tradition of Justice Antonin Scalia. Not legislating from the bench, but upholding our Constitution. So let me say this, for the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of the sanctity of life, for the sake of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, for the sake of all of our God-given liberties enshrined in our founding documents, Georgia, we need to decide here and now today that the next president to make appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States will be President Donald Trump. You know, as I close, let me remind you that I hope you'll leave here today, and I hope you'll tell somebody. You know, you think about this great former governor, Sonny Perdue, who made history back in 2002 in the great state of Georgia. And the governor and I were just talking about it. Says back in the day when he and Mary were out there campaigning, they said, you can't win in Georgia. That's not going to happen. Well, all the establishment, I'm told, here in Georgia was kind of telling them, we don't elect Republican governors in this state, right? Even some Republicans said that, I'm told. But Sonny Perdue took his message directly to the people of Georgia and changed the destiny of this state and its prosperity ever since. And the difference was that he took his message straight to the people. And I guess that's my message to you today more than anything else, is I hope you'll leave here today, and I hope to say hello to as many of you personally as I can before we whisk our way up to Atlanta. But somebody's here from Atlanta. But I want to tell you, I hope you leave here today with a burden on your heart to go tell somebody. If something that I've said here has maybe reminded you of something that you already knew, maybe it's one of the reasons why you're wearing that red cap today, go out and tell somebody. Because I'm absolutely convinced that all the TV shows in the world, all the front pages of newspapers, all the internet stories and radio shows and tweets in the world don't matter a thimble compared to the difference that you can make with somebody who knows you at work or worship or in your neighborhood, who trusts you and respects you. So I want you to go and tell them. Tell them about this choice. It's change versus the status quo. It's about staying on a path of more of the failed policies that have weakened America's place in the world and stifled our economy. It's about upholding the Constitution of the United States, but it's about more than all of that. It's about really reviving the American dream. And this gets very personal for me because, like Donald Trump, my grandfather immigrated to this country from the land of Ireland. His grandfather came from another place. You looked Irish to me. My grandfather came to this country, he took a train, he went through Ellis Island, he took a train to Chicago, he drove a bus for 40 years. Proudest man I ever knew. I was named after him, Richard Michael Cawley. That's where Michael Richard Pence got his name. I can't even imagine what that Irish meant. He's thinking, looking down. But he raised my mother. She married a fast-talking salesman. He took her down to southern Indiana, bought a little house with a cornfield in the backyard, got into a gas station business. They built everything that matters, at least the way I was raised. A family, a business, and a good name. They built it all on a foundation of faith in our family. It was faith in God and faith in the American dream. Our faith in God was nurtured every day, dressing the kids up, cinching on a tie, and getting them all out the door to church, me and my 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My faith in the American dream was nurtured every day of my life because I saw it with my own eyes. And I hope as you go out and talk to neighbors and friends, I hope as you see in Donald Trump's life and his experience, I hope you sense a boundless confidence in the American dream and in a man who is committed to making that dream come alive for every American, regardless of race or creed or color. I mean, he lived the American dream just like me. His grandfather came here from another country. His father was a self-made man like mine. I mean, other than a whole lot of zeros, he and I have a lot in common. What we have in common is a boundless confidence in the American people's ability to set things right. And that's really what this is about. Yes, the election is a choice. It's a choice between policies that we know will work and policies that we know have failed. Okay? This isn't about a choice between a candidate that'll have America growing this much and one that'll have America growing this much. I think it's a choice between whether we're going to continue to go down, see America's strength and place in the world and our economy slide farther and farther down, whether we're going to stop, turn around, and go back up the hill to a boundless American future. That's what Make America Great Again is really all about. And so I want you to tell somebody. And reach out to neighbors and friends. You know, Donald Trump has been reaching out to every American, and particularly those in our minority communities who've been left behind in the American dream. Now, the other side is rolling out the old, tired playbook of divisiveness again. We're hearing the language, we hear the speeches, but the American people are not going to be fooled. We're tired of the politics of divisiveness. We're tired of politicians who divide the American people to unite their support. Donald Trump is going to fight every day to make America great again for every American, regardless of race or creed or color. I promise you that. So let's tell that story. And I'll say one other thing, that if you're of a mind, like maybe Karen and I are, occasionally bend the knee. I think we got a little more than 70 days left in this election. I hope maybe you'll bow the head on occasion. And don't pray necessarily for an election or for an outcome, but just pray for this country. Because I truly do believe, as was said thousands of years ago, that is still true today, that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, he will hear from heaven and he will heal our land again. I believe it. So I'm going to jump to your questions, but let me lay it out for you. We have a choice to make, everybody. One more time. If you want a president who will protect this nation, rebuild our military, confront radical Islamic terrorism, and rid the world of ISIS, if you want a president who will restore law and orders to the cities and towns of this country and stand by those in uniform all across America, if you want a president who will cut taxes, grow the economy, squeeze every nickel out of that bloated federal government, and repeal Obamacare lock, stock, and barrel, if you want a president who will restore the borders of this nation, who will build a wall and enforce our laws, and if you want a president who will upend the status quo in Washington, D.C., and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, then Georgia, I'll tell you what, you have but one choice, and that man is ready. This team is ready. This movement is ready. Let's go make sure that Georgia is ready, and we will elect Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States, and we will make America great again. Well, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. I mean, really, I actually think it's important. It's important in a moment like this that we remind ourselves, we pay more careful attention to what we already know, right? And I also hope you heard my admonition that you need to go tell somebody, because this election belongs to the American people, and the American people are going to decide who the next president is, not the pundits, not the pollsters, not the elites, not the establishment. It's going to be you. So with that, slip your hand into the air, and I'm happy to take a question or two. But share with me your first name if you can. Yes, sir. Go on right back there.
Got it on. I'm Aaron from Houston County. I have a suggestion, and I really appreciate the message that the Trump campaign is putting out. But the gentleman that had come out first and couldn't figure out whether to drop Hillary off in New York or Arkansas, my suggestion is drop her off at federal prison.
Thank you very much. All right, why don't we go back here? How about this gentleman right here in the wheelchair?
Yeah, the question I have to ask is, why does Hillary Clinton still have a security clearance?
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. I served in the Congress for 12 years and had access from time to time with classified information. There are people who have, in the words of the FBI director, been extremely careless with handling classified material who've lost their security clearance. And I think it's a very fair question. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that she mishandled those materials. She left them on a private server exposed and exposed America's classified secrets potentially to a wider world. And the FBI has taken a pass on that. We heard that the FBI actually was going to initiate or looked into initiating an investigation months ago into the Clinton Foundation for all of those issues and chose not to do so. So ultimately, I understand the passion that's in the room. But ultimately, the American people are going to have the verdict And the verdict should be we elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States. Okay. How about right over here? He's got a microphone for you. What's your name?
Barbara Jessup.
Hey, Barbara.
Hi. And I'm from Henry County, Georgia, just up the road a piece.
Okay.
And my question is, I'm concerned about the Never Trumpers and some of the cruise people who just can't seem to come over to our side. And how do you think we should approach it, or what can we do? Because we need that Republican vote.
Well, we do. And, let me say, we went through an extraordinary primary season. I mean, I can't even remember how many people were running on all those stages. How many? 17, the right number? Okay. I mean, it was just amazing, right? And it was a rough and tumble primary, right? And a lot of very talented men and women in the primary. And, in NASCAR, there's a phrase that I've always liked that is, rubbing is racing. You bang some fenders. But at the end of the day, I always love it at the end of the race when the guys that bang fenders real hard end up shaking hands and you get a thumbs up, right? And we're going to see that happen. I think the key for us going forward with people that still have hesitation that ought to be with us is just that we're going to go out and earn it. We're going to go out and earn it. And what I'd encourage you to do is take a look at that, starting with that great speech that he gave at the VFW about reforming the Veterans Health Administration so it provides world-class health care for everyone who has served in uniform in this country. It's a great speech. Speech at the VFW, the speech in Detroit, that outlining that economic agenda that's been praised by economists like Larry Kudlow and Steve Moore and other great conservative economists. His great speech in Milwaukee on law and order, his outreach speeches that are talking about reviving the economic and educational opportunities in our cities. Carry those messages out, okay? Because I understand that in the course of competitive politics, things get a little rough sometimes, it gets a little personal. But at the end of the day, this election is a choice, and it's a choice between two agendas, not so much as two candidates, and making sure people see that agenda. And I just promise you, in the next 70 some odd days, Donald Trump and I are going to campaign relentlessly across this country with a positive agenda, and I believe we're going to earn the support. We're going to earn the support of people who ought to be with us and who aren't with us yet. And we're going to carry it forward. How about right down here? It's a great question, though. Thanks, Barbara.
Hello,
What's your
Mike.
name?
My name's Janice Westmoreland.
Janice?
I'm from Janice Westmoreland.
Hi.
I'm from Baldwin County, Georgia. My concern is, I'm very concerned that this election will be stolen from us through voter fraud. And I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, elections are administered and governed at the state level. We operate the elections at the state level. And, in the state of Indiana, we broke ground. We went all the way to the Supreme Court and we upheld. I think if you have to have a photo ID to cash a check, you ought to have a photo ID to cast your ballot, right? And the Supreme Court of the United States has upheld that. And I don't know if that's yet the law in the state of Georgia, but it is. The governor tells me it is. Good for you. But I think that's an important measure that you're seeing other states take up, and they ought to take up. The second thing, though, I will tell you is very practical, really and truly, Janice, and that is, I've only held 3 elective offices in my lifetime. I'm working on a 4th. Is number 1, I've been governor of the great state of Indiana, greatest honor of my life. I've been a congressman for 12 years. It seemed longer, but I was in Congress for 12 years. The third thing, I was a precinct committeeman. That's it. I was elected precinct committeeman in my home precinct. And I want to tell you, if you're not involved as a precinct worker, an observer, a poll watcher at your local polls, you need to get involved, because that's where elections happen. That's where accountability happens. And so I would just encourage you to take if you haven't yet, anyone within the sound of my voice, take greater ownership of the election here in Georgia by getting involved yourself. Okay? I mean, the principle of one person, one vote is at the very heart of our democracy. But it happens one precinct at a time, one county at a time, one state at a time. And so everybody who cares about this agenda and about this election ought to take, before you're done, make the calls, knock on the doors, tell your neighbors and friends, but on election day and in early voting, be there, be a part of it. The American people can ensure that these elections are administered with integrity. I promise you that.
Governor, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Here in the state of Georgia, we have the electronic machines. And I know there's been a lot of things on the web about being able to rig those. And so how can we make sure that's not done? I know one of the things that they said is to do early voting. But here, when you go to do early voting, you hand your paper over to someone and they see who you are. They see exactly what's on your paper. I don't understand why it doesn't go into a box and it counted elsewhere.
Right. What's on that hat there? You didn't tell me what's on your hat. Navy veteran. Give her a round of applause. Thanks for your service. Thank you. Appreciate you very much. Thanks for still serving by being here today. God bless you. I think that it's not the mechanism that we administer the votes that ought to create any anxiety. We live in an information age. We can do that. I really do believe that holding accountable those that administer our elections and being involved in that process is very important, very real. I mean, I understand the anxiety that people feel, and we've seen instances of voter fraud in this country over the last 10 and 20 years. But this is an election where I do believe that in states around the country there have been reforms that will ensure greater integrity, whatever the means that the ballots are counted. But I just encourage you, really and truly, that, the elections, it seems like, happen up here in the big public debate, and we hear about a new poll every 15 seconds, right? And a new pundit, there's a new panel on TV talking about. Elections actually happen at the precinct level, and that's where the votes are counted. And so rolling your sleeves up, getting involved at the precinct level, I'm confident that the American people can ensure the integrity of America's elections. I'm confident of that. So I think that's the last one. Let me thank you all, but I want to challenge you one more time. I want to challenge you one more time, okay? And that is very simply, when you leave here, go tell somebody. You want me to take this guy's question? I'd love to hear it. All right.
Oh, okay. My name is Van Cheatham.
What's your first name?
Van.
Hi, Van.
Cheatham. 22 years of military service. I have a question.
Who are you with?
I was the Air Force.
Yeah, thank you.
5th Mob.
Thanks for your service.
How do we get around this Clinton machine with the media? How do we get past all the rhetoric that fills the heads of people when they come home from work? That's what they listen to over the news. That's what they hear. I was told you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So I just want to ask that question. How do you get around that? I know you mentioned about the grassroots for us to get up and talk to other people, but it hurts my heart when a friend of mine told me, well, if you don't like the way things are going, leave. I worked and I fought for this country for 22 years, and for someone to tell me to leave, I will not do. Okay, the other thing that I want to put in is that I get my energy at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to tell you this. Herman Cain and My Cup of Coffee is who I listen to, and I understand where he's coming from, okay? I'm just saying. And on my Facebook, I always say, I'm just saying.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your service. I'm having a cup of coffee with Herman Cain tomorrow at 11, so make a note of it. If you don't like the way things are going, Win. I mean, that's the right answer. It really is, men and women. I want to tell you, I'm traveling all over this country campaigning with Donald Trump, campaigning for Donald Trump. I mean, okay, when I'm with him, and can you give yourselves a round of applause for coming out to hear me? I mean, thank you so very much. I'm very humbled by that. I really am. I mean, I know I'm a B-list Republican celebrity. You know, I'm kind of the guy behind the guy, right? But, so thank you, really and truly. But I come out, I got to tell you, I have to tell you that I want to encourage you with the words that everywhere I go in this country, campaigning with our nominee and for our nominee, I see just what I'm seeing here in Georgia today. It's just what Sonny Perdue told me he saw back in 2002. There is a resolve in the American people who know that we can be stronger, who know that we can rebuild our military, we can restore the arsenal of democracy, we can stand with broad-shouldered American leadership on the world stage once again, who know that our economy can prosper again, and that we can be confident that our children's future is going to be beyond anything that we could ask or imagine in present day today. We can get back to that kind of America, but it's just going to take us going out and winning. And what I see is people all over the country, young and old, rich and poor, and everything in between, who are coming up to us and saying, we're going to do it. And I'm confident that it's going to happen. So be encouraged. Turn down the volume on the TV, for heaven's sakes. Turn up the volume on Herman Cain or anybody else that you like, and believe what you're hearing. It's happening. It's happening. This is not about, I'll say you the last thing, Donald Trump says this to me every day. He says it to me every day. He says, Mike, this is not about me. It's not about us. It's not about our political party. This is a movement of the American people who know we can be better, we can be stronger, we can be more prosperous, and we will make America great again. Let's go get it done, Georgia. Let's make it happen. Thank you, and God bless you. It's an honor to be with all of you today.